Hi. So basically, the actual file for the video that I made just corrupted, like crashes the editing software, but I managed to salvage some of the audio. Like it just, I don't know what the problem was. And then basically I just turned it into a podcast because it was just easier that way. And then I had to change the volume level. So just bear with the volume if it varies. Let's just call it a network issue. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so you know how everyone always says, oh, just be yourself. That's the key to making friends, that's the key to happiness. Be who you are. But how do you actually do that? Like, how do you actually act on the advice that is, just be yourself? And as you're probably aware, on this channel, I'm talking about the specific sort of example or like the specific circumstance of someone who's, boarding away from home or studying far from home, like an international student at uni, maybe.
And it's like on one hand, you are getting used to the school, you're getting used to the curriculum and the boarding environment, like being responsible for your money or your these little things that you didn't really have to think about at home. Now you're kind of getting used to having to consider those in your day-to-day life. So that's on its own, that is, tough, right? That's tough. But I think it's another thing when you are having to do that and also get used to the wider cultural cues of the place where your school is. So that's things like, getting used to how you relate to teachers, which might be completely different from your other school or where you're coming from, or getting used to the sense of humor of the culture where you are now, because that is something that underpins very crucial things like making friends. For example, if the humor is if people are not understanding that you're joking and if you're not understanding the jokes, then it does make getting to know people and those initial acquaintance stages a lot harder and a lot more nerve-wracking, I feel, for people. So it's one thing to kind of, just do the school stuff, but then to consider the wider things, getting used to a whole new country, that is another thing entirely. And so I think for a lot of people who feel this almost like this double time, not pressure, but double time work that you have to do, like identity work that you have to do to kind of almost you feel like you have to catch up with the expectations of where a just for an example, like a sixth former is meant to be in terms of moving through your environment, in terms of just how you carry yourself in that environment and things like that. But the reality is you're new. The reality is you may not even know what that expectation is. You can just see around you that it's kind of like that you're not quite in sync with what you feel is how you should operate in this environment. And I think for a lot of people that ends up feeling like, okay, I'm literally just trying to keep my head above water. I'm literally just treading water, but everyone around me seems to be swimming, and I don't know how to like get to that stage. I don't even know how long I can keep this up of just frantically just moving to just keep afloat. And I think for a lot of people they feel that pressure or that tension, and they yeah, I think they do put a lot of pressure on themselves, but not without reason. I do think a lot of it is misunderstood as, just pure homesickness or just pure oh, you're not ready to live on your own. But when it's not really the case, it's more so I I feel like I am able to do these things if I knew what it was I was meant to do. If I knew what it was or how it was that you if I knew how to navigate this space, I would. It's more like that, you know? And so I think it's not that people don't want to help students that are in that situation. I think it's just maybe it just doesn't cross their mind. maybe it's just like that understanding gap of like being able to really be in their shoes and understand what it's like to be a kid in that situation. Because even for adults who are like, expats or adults who move countries, even with their like families, start a new job, you're in a whole new place, to get used to life there, and like how you do day-to-day life, how you like make sure everything's running okay in your house with your family, how you relate to your coworkers, even adults find that really hard. And so I think for a young person to do it is already like very, you're already doing a lot. And I think sometimes it feels like there's no time to even take pride in that. And there's no time to like even take a breath to like realize what you're doing is like already not easy. So circling back to the, I guess, the topic of this video, when people then say, you know, the solution to feeling that sense of like being acclimatized or feeling that sense of like feeling settled, when people say the solution to making friends, for example, is to be yourself, I think a lot of the time it can almost feel like, okay, but in this environment where, maybe I've been trying to make friends, I've been trying to connect with people, but it's just like, it's almost like there's this huge gap between my understanding of how this whole making friends thing works and other people's understanding. There's this huge gap and I can't seem to bridge it. And so it's like the days are going by and I haven't really like had a laugh with anyone. I haven't really like spoken to someone in terms of like having a conversation, a chat, like just something on the level of social interaction, not just um, talking to your teacher or talking to ask someone to pass a salt or something like that. So when you are in that space, it often feels like I don't even feel like myself here. I don't even feel like who I am when I'm in this space. So how can I be myself when I don't know what that means in this context? How can I be myself when I've been trying? I thought I was being myself, but it's been like not working. And so it's like making me even question, am I doing something wrong? Is this not the fundamentals of what I've been asked to do? So I don't understand why it's not working. I think, yeah, I think a lot of people do go through that, but they don't say. Not everyone says how they feel, and I think it's important to be able to tell that to someone, you know even if it's your parents, if it's your like house mistress, your matron, like you need to be able to at least just let someone know that that's how you're feeling. And I'll tell you why. Because not that that person will have all the answers, but so that, God forbid, but if things do escalate to, okay, I'm being actively ignored, if things do get serious, it's best to have the person in charge of pastoral care or your parent or, that like authority figure that you can rely on. It's best to have them like up to date with the situation so that they can take the best course of action if things escalate. And obviously, I don't want that to happen for anybody. Things will get worse. That's not what I'm saying. What I mean is like if in that, level one stage, you're already feeling like, okay, something's off, and you're trying to communicate how intense that whole experience has been on top of your like acclimatization in terms of like bullying and that kind of thing, you need to tell them from the level one stage. But it means that they're informed that there's something off, so that if things do further like go off, you know, it's clear that sense of how things have progressed. And I think another reason why you should tell someone how you're feeling is because keeping things to yourself never really like solves the issue. Even though it's hard to like know where to start in terms of how you're feeling, I think even trying to express it to that authority figure is good, because who knows, from then they might like try to, I don't know, like keep an eye out for you in terms of what you've described to them. Like if you describe that, oh, meal times are hard because it's kind of like I'm always sitting on my own, then they'll kind of keep an eye out for that situation and that circumstance that you've described, and they might be able to advise you further, or even like point you in the direction of things that can help solve the issue. Like maybe they might introduce you to a particular society in school or a club where you can meet friends, and then all of you start to sit together, or they can just take steps to make that better for you. And I guess the thing is, you'll never know what those steps are until you let them know, because they won't know that they have to take it in the first place if they don't know that the thing is happening. So I think, again, as someone who's moved like in that whole secondary school phase, like every 2 years, every two like and a half years, so I think that the whole idea of like being yourself, in a way, the whole idea of being yourself is almost like in defiance of what's going on. So it's like no matter what those first few weeks do turn out to be like, it's almost like to follow that advice of being yourself is like you remind yourself of who you are, even though the situation around you seems to be like calling everything that you know into question. And not even to even sound very like theoretical and very like big speech at the end of a movie. But I honestly do feel like to get to that point of being yourself means that in those hard moments, you almost need like a reminder of who you are. And that can be in any kind of form. That can be in the form of, again, talking to like your parents, talking to other friends that you have maybe outside the school, maybe back at home. It could be even in the form of like you writing out a list of like qualities that you like about yourself. Those kind of things. Like I'm a loyal friend, I'm honest. And also not just that, but like things that you're interested in, like hobbies. Like I like running, I like watching this particular show, I love talking about this topic, I like doing this. Like simple things, like taking stock of that help to reinforce, like I don't know, like reinforce your grip on who you are. Because I think if you don't remind yourself, or if you don't have systems in place that can remind you, like talking to friends back home, then you can sometimes feel like you're just kind of cut adrift and you're like, what is going on? It's like, I don't even feel like myself here. It's just like everything is really weird. So I think that does help. And it doesn't mean like once you write that list or talk to that friend, it's like, oh, I'm back. I'm just, you know, everything's okay now. Everything's good now. It's more like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more like that's the foundation that you need to keep solid in order to actually build on that and link the concept of being yourself to the actual goal, which is making friends. And I think I have like a few tips for how that can look in different yeah, how that can look in different ways, like how you can actually execute that, like being yourself in terms of like a verb, like to, what is it to be yourself? Like how do you be yourself? Something that you just are. Especially when you're at home, you just are that thing. You just are yourself. You just are expressing yourself. But I think in this new environment, sometimes when you don't have all the familiar things of home, and I don't mean familiar like, oh, at home I can eat anytime, oh, at home I can go anywhere. I don't quite mean that for this example, but what I mean by familiar things is like, think about your room, for example. Think about the way that like you come back there every day, right? In your house. You go to your room every day, you sleep there, you wake up there. But if you think about the way that you've decorated your room, if you think about the things that you put in your room, the posters, the bedspread, the choices that you've made to pick like, X pattern over Y pattern, or X like, you know, poster over Y poster. Those are decisions that reflect something about you, something about your interests, something about your likes, your dislikes, your personality. But because you're there every day, you may not notice. Like it's just an implicit, like I don't even think about this thing. It just I'm not even thinking about consciously making my room reflect who I am. It just reflects who I am by the choices that I've made for decorating it, or putting stuff in it. So yeah, you may not notice that those things are like little like crumbs, like Easter eggs of who you are. But I think when sometimes when you like take a step back and you think about what you choose to keep in your room, it's like you can clearly see how it maps onto who you are, right? So in the same kind of way, I think there are certain things that you can do in this new environment when you don't have those familiar cues, like those physical reminders. And I think ease of navigation is also part of feeling like yourself, because the places where you feel like yourself are places that you can kind of move through the environment without feeling like I don't know what I'm meant to do here, or I don't know like how to navigate here. I don't know how to interact with people, things like that. When you feel like yourself, you can do all those things without even thinking, because you've lived there. You've like either you've grown up there or you lived there for a long time. You're very very familiar, and that again is another like facet or another layer of who you are, right? Like the fact that you can move through this space is just you being who you are. So when you're in the new environment, you don't necessarily have those like societal structures that you're familiar with that you can like move effortlessly through. It does make you feel like off balance. Like it does make you feel like I'm not stable, like this like I'm not settled here yet. And that feeling of not being stable and not being settled, like almost like the inverse of what I said before, the not feeling stable and settled makes you feel less like yourself. You feel like fish out of water.
So I think one way to kind of act on the advice, like, oh, just be yourself, just be true to yourself and things will all work out. I think one way is to, again, set up those things that symbolize, what makes you happy, what makes you feel like yourself, what are those things that you could talk about for hours, what are those things that you're interested in. And because in school, you may not be able to decorate your room 100% the way you would at home. Like there's certain things you can't bring, certain things you can't like put on the walls and stuff. So one way to do it is actually through fashion. Like the clothes you wear, the shoes that you wear, your bag, your pencil case, your water bottle even, like all these things add up to say something about you, right? And I'm not saying like every bit of your wardrobe, every accessory has to be coordinated, like to make some kind of holistic narrative about yourself. It doesn't have to be that sort of calculated. I think it's more a case of if you want to. Like if you naturally just want to wear these things, if you naturally just want to like, I don't know, like just have these interests represented through your clothing and your accessories, then that's fine. But like maybe you have a uniform that's super, super strict, or maybe you've got a uniform for like every single occasion. Like you've got the normal school uniform, and then you've got the loungewear uniform, like when you're not in class. Then you've got the formal wear uniform for like big assemblies and prize giving and stuff. And then you've got the Sunday uniform, which is different. And then you've got the sportswear uniform. Then you've got like the formal sportswear uniform. And you've got just uniform for everything, basically. So yeah, if that's you, then I completely understand if like I'm not gonna tell you to do like in those movies when they customize their whole uniform, like they cut designs into the uniform, they cut like the sleeves of the top, they do something funky with the tie, they put like pins and patches, and they dye one part of the skirt and then the other part of the skirt they make it asymmetrical. And yeah, like even if that is what you're super, super into, if you're in a school where already the uniform is like a non-negotiable thing, then that approach is not really going to fly. So what I would suggest instead is to take advantage of those other moments when you aren't so limited in terms of what you can wear, or elements of your outfit, particular things that aren't so prescribed. Like, even though I've seen rules like specifying like how high the heel of your shoe can be, or rules saying like what type of bag you can bring, like satchel bags, backpacks and stuff like that. But like the actual design of the bag and the style, maybe even the material, that is all left up to you. You can kind of exercise your freedom in that sense, I guess. Yeah, like you can kind of make it individual to you in a way. Like even if everyone has to have satchel bags in the school, they're not all going to look alike. Like some people might have leather ones, some people might have colorful ones, some people might have, I don't know, like some people might have like some type of briefcase type one. Like you are then free to express yourself through the style of satchel bag. Like the subcategory and the details are kind of up to you in a way. Certain pieces of your uniform that are not prescribed, like there's certain areas within like the whole outfit, that you can really make your own. This is not the same as like finding a loophole, because a loophole would be like if they say your heel has to be, I don't know, like no higher than 4 centimeters. You're like, oh, well, I'm gonna make the heel like 4 centimeters, but it's gonna be like a stiletto heel. Like that is not what I'm saying. That is probably a ticket to internal suspension. What I'm talking about is more like if you say, okay, I'm gonna find a shoe that is within that like limit, but the style of the shoe or, you know, like the design of the shoe is something that isn't egregious or is something that you think the school will allow. I think there's some moments that you can kind of capitalize on to have that bit of self-expression, that bit of freedom. Like in the evening in the boarding house, like after prep, everyone's like just chilling. Basically, you're not going to leave the boarding house again that day. You now have the option to wear pajamas, basically. And another thing, in one of my schools, we kind of had that situation of like different uniforms for different occasions. But one thing they used to do was do like home clothes day. I think they do that in all schools, basically. But in this school, they did it and it was like a charity thing. So you kind of, when you donate, you're allowed to wear home clothes. So that was one day, like aside from like the balls or the prom or stuff like that, one day when everyone would be able to just let their hair down a bit and just be themselves in terms of like, okay, this is how I want to present myself. This is how I want to like represent who I am. So yeah, and it's something again because in that school it was not like there were no flexi boarders, there was no like weekly boarding, anything like that. So the only things you have throughout the term normally are what you bring from home, or like on visiting day, maybe what your family brings for you. But anyway, normally what you have is what you bring from home, like before the term starts. So let's say if it's second term, like, January to, um, I don't know, March or something, then you have to start planning your mufti, like we call it mufti day. So you have to start planning your mufti day outfit over Christmas, and you have to pack it during the Christmas break, basically. So there's all this anticipation, all this like excitement around like coordinating the outfit that you want to wear, and like everyone kind of like hangs it up in their wardrobe. Just a nice topic of conversation in the build up to the actual like mufti day when people are like, "Oh yeah, what are you wearing? Like, what's your outfit?" And then they kind of like bring it out, and it's all this kind of like, I don't know, just a nice talking point with like roommates or like friends in your boarding house or something. So when I was in year 9, we had one of these mufti days, and mufti day, I'd planned to wear this really cool top, which I still have. I'm not sure, maybe by the time this goes up, I'm not sure if you will see it in any videos, but you might see it around at some point. Um, I had this top, which was just like a plain white kind of crew neck t-shirt, but the design on it is like Captain America's shield kind of lodged in a wall, and it's like the wall's got cracks and everything, as if like the white canvas of the t-shirt is the wall and it's got cracks and it's got like a shield sticking out of it. I think that was one of my favorite like um bits of merch that I had. On that particular day as well, we had a huge like whole school assembly. So we all had to like line up outside like the main hall. Keep in mind, at this point, I was in year 9 and I'd been at this school since the beginning of year 7. And I'd been with everyone since, since we all started together, right? So as we're lining up, like each class in their own like line, someone from another class just comes up to me and is like, "Oh my gosh, like your shirt is so cool. Where did you get it?" Like, and I mean in a genuine way, like how as in someone is giving you a compliment, but they actually like genuinely want to speak about this thing, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like no way." So yeah, she comes up to me, she's like, "Oh my gosh, like your shirt is so cool. Where did you get it? Like I had no idea that you were into this stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love this." Like each person is matching the enthusiasm of the other person just naturally, right? And so that's just one of those good memories that I have. It's just so, I don't know, it's just so nice. it just kind of brings out a side to everyone that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise because, they like there's no like reason necessarily for them to speak about this topic, right? But yeah, it was just so nice to kind of get chatting with her and just like talk like at that time, right? That summer 2015 was Age of Ultron. That winter was Force Awakens. And at the time, this must have been December or November of 2015. So there's a lot to talk about Marvel wise. Like everyone was excited about Civil War next year. So that was, yeah, that's just one way that you can kind of do that. Thinking about visual triggers for conversation and visual triggers for like topics of conversation. That's why I think that accessories and fashion are such useful tools. If you're someone who's like, look, I just want to find a way to find, like, how do I find these people that I can sort of talk to about this or that I might really get along with? So, yeah, I think that's quite valuable. I'm really thankful and like fortunate that I did have like quite a good group of friends in that school. But I think if you're someone who didn't really have that, those interactions, those nice, so genuine and like not small talk interactions, those genuine, like nice little conversations here and there do mean a lot to people and can actually improve a lot of your, yeah, just like improve your day or improve like your mood and things like that. So I think that's really key. Even the slides that you wear like around the boarding house or like your pajamas that you wear like around the board, like these are things that again, I don't want you to think about it too much and to be like, oh my gosh, I have to coordinate every single thing that I own. Like, oh my gosh, people are gonna watch. Like, it's not necessarily that people are watching you. It's just that you're doing your thing. And because with the uniforms, everyone looks alike, you never know if someone else who's a mega fan of like, I don't know, like whatever interest you're into or hobby or group or anything that you're into, you never know if another person who loves it as much as you is right like in your vicinity. Is like right next door to you, is your neighbor, is your roommate. I mean, I would hope at some point you would know what your roommate likes. Yeah, so you never know if that person, that like friend that you can kind of talk to about these things and just like someone you really get along with. You never know if they're right next door. You'd never know if they were right in your class, how many years you guys have been sitting together, sitting in the same room, the same class, maybe the same table. You just never know because conversations in class maybe don't go into that like realm of things or that territory. It's always like strictly academic or just about things that you can see, right? Like about what you're having for lunch or about something that happened in the class or something like that. And so you're in this kind of like acquaintance phase, or maybe you just never really speak to them. But then this kind of just like kind of is a catalyst for accelerating that whole process of like going through that phase of like, okay, what, like I'm trying to figure out what common ground we have, and you just automatically go into something that both of you are really passionate about, like both of you really like. And so it's just such a good way to start like a friendship. Like the pencil case example, for instance, like I used to have this pencil case that was made up of different like comic panels, like different Marvel comics. And it was really nice in terms of just I just thought it was quite cool. The 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 thing I didn't anticipate was other people finding it cool and just being like, "Oh my gosh, where do you get it? Like that's so cool." And it's just like a nice kind of reason to be able to chat with people. Not saying that it's like a guarantee that if you do this, it will always like work, like it's some kind of like magic formula. But in terms of getting a start, and I think that's what a lot of people need, just like a start, just like a chance in a way.
If being yourself is a baseline, doing these like actions or making these choices that reflect you or reflect parts of you, it's like building blocks up to actually getting to the point where you have that friendship with like even if it's just one person, it all adds up to like people being able to know more about you and people being able to see their own like, oh, like she likes that, I like that, we can talk more about this. So it's like it's at the very basic level, being yourself sometimes looks like signifying your interests or like wearing your interests on your sleeve so that people can then like know that that's what you're about, what you're into, and then for those first few conversations to happen.
So, you know how I said that I was leaving that first school? So, in the second school I went to, when I joined, okay, so like the winter before I joined was when The Force Awakens came out. And if you remember, there was so much anticipation, hype, and everything around it. And that translated to all the like merch, right? And I got really interested in Star Wars, and I happened to kind of be able to get a bunch of like merch and stuff. And one of the things I got was like this pair of earrings, and they had like the Rebel insignia on them. They were so, so cool. When I joined this new school, the same kind of thing happened again. This time it was in PE class, so we were all like outside, all wearing our like PE uniform. So I had those earrings on like that day. And so we were doing some, I don't know, like we were getting ready to start a game, and someone just came up to me and was like, "Oh, I like your earrings." And then that was just how, like, that was just it. That person ended up being one of my closest friends at that time. And it's just from this one interaction that we actually like met each other. You know what I mean? So I definitely would not underestimate the power of doing like very simple things. And I didn't wear them in order to make new friends. I just wore them because I thought they were cool and I really liked the franchise and everything like that. And other people who, independent of like what I'm doing, happen to like it as well. So that's where like our paths crossed basically. I think there's never any harm in trying. Like you never know until you try, until you like just put yourself out there in a way. But at the same time, I think if people like if it doesn't work, you know what I mean, then you don't have to beg anyone. It's like, oh my gosh, like these people are so mean to me. But, it seems like we would get along. Maybe I'll just, you know, act the way they want me to act so that we can be friends. So I'm gonna change so they're not mean to me. That never ends well. So I would really advise just don't do it. They should be the ones who are made to change their behavior because why should you start, giving somebody hassle for something that doesn't really matter? You know what I mean? Like, why should you start giving someone hassle for something that doesn't even concern you? How does someone else's interest, a benign sort of interest that doesn't hurt other people, how does it concern you? You have books to read, they're gathering dust. You have work to do, it's going undone, and you're facing somebody else. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's some people's reasoning for you. So don't let someone else's flawed reasoning make you change stuff that you like. Don't let anybody kind of put you down. Even if you don't find anyone else who shares your interest in particular things, that doesn't mean that your interest is devoid of value. That doesn't mean your interest is in any way less than, what someone else might like. Because I feel like at the end of the day, and I'm probably going to do another video about this, at the end of the day, it's the stuff that you hold on to that actually like makes you stand out. Like it's those interests that, whether or not they're popular, whether or not they're mainstream at the moment, you should just do what is authentic to you. Like again, within reason. I'm not saying if somebody says, "Oh, it's authentic to go beating people," like that that's that can be authentic to you in your cell, in your prison. But if it's something benign, just like trust me, things will kind of come full circle to the point where it's like, oh, so this thing is cool now. So there's not really any point changing because at the end of the day, everybody's kind of like the wind will change, and then that thing that has was so, you know, oh, like point of difference is now the thing that people are chasing in trends, like a watered down version of that. But yeah, I will save that for the other, I'll save that for a future video. So I hope this was helpful, guys, in terms of just understanding some simple ways that maybe you can express yourself. And I really hope that it does go some way towards you, like making new friends and just having a good time at your school. Because, yeah, I think you deserve it. I think everyone deserves that. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.